Okay, welcome to another CESD Teaching Tech Tips. I'm Alan Whitehead from Learning Services with Chinook's Edge, and tonight we're going to spend some time looking at Google Forms and how we can use those in different ways, and specifically what are some add-ons for that. So to get started, I'm going to share my screen. And just some things to keep in mind is that you can view our previous videos. If you go to YouTube, to the Chinook's Edge School Division YouTube channel, you'll find all our former videos there. One in particular will be of interest if you haven't watched it already. It'd be good to watch it before this one, and that's the one where we talk about using Google for assessment, and there's a piece about using Google Forms in there, and that'll be more of an introduction to how to use Google Forms if you haven't used them before. Once you've watched that, or if you're familiar with Google Forms, then tonight's session on add-ons for Google Forms will make a lot more sense. So I recommend you take a look at those as well. Another one also that might be of interest is our video on math applications. And we talked about GMath quite a bit in there, which is an add-on for Google Forms and Sheets, which would be a great add-on to look at, but we won't talk about that tonight because I went over that in the math applications session. So that video is also available on our channel as well. So to start with, just quickly, a Google form is a great way to collect survey data or any kind of data really to get responses or answers from students, parents, staff, colleagues, all sorts of different things you can do with Google Forms. You access it through Google Drive. You can create new ones when you're in your Google Drive. It's the purple app, Google Forms. And like I said, I'm not going to go over the basics of it because that's in the other video, but what I've got here is just a basic Google form that I've created already. These are great for assessment, for getting surveys, getting opinions. You can put, once you create a form, I'll just show you what this one looks like live. You can share that form to people. You can give them a link to fill it out. And those responses from a form are automatically placed into a spreadsheet that's automatically created once you create a form. So just if you look in my drive here, I created this Google form, and then this spreadsheet is created for the responses automatically as well. So it collects the responses in a spreadsheet and organizes it for you automatically. You can do multiple formats for your questions. You can see I've got a lot of multiple choice questions, selected response questions. You can also put in text questions, paragraphs, grids, all sorts of things. You can see with different types of questions. You can put in dates, checkboxes, so you can select multiple, choose from a list, all sorts of things like that. One other neat thing is to easily create an overview to view anything that's been entered into a sheet. So I'm in the form right now, and I'm going to go to responses. If I go to summary of responses, it will give me a really nice graph of each of the responses that I've received. So I just filled in some responses myself. It shows me who responded. And then it gives me some charts for each of the questions that I have in there. And you can see it breaks down the answers that have been given. So it's a nice way to represent your data in different ways that you collect with the Google form. So that was just going in the form to responses, summary of responses. All right, so tonight we're going to talk mostly about add-ons for Google Forms, and add-ons are tools that are useful with forms. Basically, they're something that's been created to improve Google Forms or different uses. When we're in Google Form, there's an add-on tab up here at the top in the menu, and you can see I've got a whole bunch I've added before. If you've never tried them out before, you'll have to go to Get Add-ons, and then you can search them in this pop-up box and add them that way. Once you've added them, you've got them, you can use them over and over. You have to authorize them one time, but once you've done that, you've got them and can keep using them. So anything I show tonight, you'll have to add this way. So the first one to take a look at, we'll just look at some simple ones. So I've created this form with some questions. You can see kind of what are Google Forms, what is Fluebrew, that's an add-on we'll look at in a minute, and some parent-teacher interview times. So looking at that one, that last question, parent-teacher interview times, a useful add-on is called Form Limiter. And what that does is it allows for a selection only to be made a certain number of times. So if I go to the add-on and say set limit, it'll pull up a little control box over here on the right, and I can say I want to limit either by date and time, max. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one here. Not form limiter, I'm confused. We want to go to choice eliminator. So when we want to start choice eliminator, it runs very similar to the one we just looked at, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But I can decide which question I want to place limits on, or all of them if I want. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to go to parent-teacher interview times, and I'm going to say eliminate choices. If I click on choice options, it'll give me more specific details of how it's going to eliminate. Basically, I can decide how many times an option can be chosen. So in this example, with it being parent-teacher interview times, you might just want to allow it to be chosen once. So have it as it is right here with 1. And as soon as that's chosen once, that option will disappear from future respondents' options. If you're saying we have 2 spots at 2:30, you can change that to 2 then, and it will disappear after it's been clicked twice by separate responders. So that's useful for things like parent-teacher interviews, for sure. You can do it for multiple questions if that makes sense as well. Okay, so that's choice eliminator. Form limiter, which I was going into before, is another simple one, but very handy, where you can basically tell the form to stop receiving answers or respondents. So you can say limit based on a date and time. So you can say on this day at this time. You can change that to PM. I'm going to turn off the survey basically. This message is what people will see if they do try to still fill in the form, and you can edit that to change it however you like. You can also set it to email the owner yourself if you've created the form once the limit's been reached and it's shut down. Basically, it just turns off the survey, so it won't work anymore. You can also set it to the max number of form responses. So if you were using this with the class and you had 20 students in the class, you could say turn it off after 20 students have filled it out. So you could say 20. And same thing, there's a message that will show up, and you can have yourself emailed once that limit's been reached. And the last one is destination of spreadsheet cell value. So you could say in my response sheet, if something comes up in a certain sheet, you can set it up to shut off that way as well. So that's form limiter. Form notifications is another simple add-on. So if we download it and go to configure notifications, you can say notify me as the owner. You can put in your email address and say you want it to send me a notification after 10 responses are received, or you can say after 1 response is received. You can set that up, and you can ask it to notify respondents. You can base it on, it asks what is their email, so you'll need to make sure if you're going to use form notifications with respondents, you'll have to build a question, as I have in this one, right here, asking for their email address, and tell it the email address question will have their email address. Then it will use the email address that they've entered. Notification email subject, this is what the subject will say, and then you can write in a custom email that they'll receive based on submitting a form. So you can put in as much as you like in there. So that might be handy if you've got students doing this as a formative quiz and you want them to go look at more materials, or you can even put web links or things like that in there for their actions for them to take based on that. So that's form limiter. One more is form values. And this is handy if you want to have kind of a bank of values that you want to add into a question. So when you run this, it will create this form values add-on sheet. This was automatically created, and you can add in different keywords and different choices. So you can see I've got 3 keyword columns and different choices below that. Like it says there, don't delete it because this application or add-on will use this sheet. It'll be stored in your Google Drive, and you can go in and edit it and add to it. But when we're in a form, what that looks like, you can change your value list or get to that list we were just looking at through this link, you can choose one of your questions that you've created. So I'm just going to create a new one actually quickly to show you how this would be handy. So create a question. What is your favorite tree? Refresh over here in the form box after I've entered that new question. And now you can see that question shows up here in the choose a question pull down. I'm going to say that one and then choose a value list. It'll be trees. Submit. And now it'll change. You might have just saw it change. It changes the selections in that question. So if you've got kind of a common set of values you want to put into a form question every time, it's handy then you would just go to this sheet and add them in however many you like, and those will show up over here, and you can add them in with multiple questions. So it's not quite like creating a test bank, but it's something similar where you've got common values that you could enter over and over and over again. So that's another little time saver kind of add-on. Another one that we've looked at a little bit before, but I think it's important to look at it again, is Flubaroo. And this is a great one for automatically marking the respondents to a form. So if we go to our sheet where all the responses go, you can see I've got 4 responses. I put in the name for one of them as key. I did that myself. So as a teacher, if you create a quiz and you want Flubaroo to mark it automatically, you would have to go through and enter the correct answers to your quiz as a response with the name key in there so you know which one is the key. So in the sheet, we go to add-ons, and we're going to go to Flubaroo. We're going to enable Flubaroo for this sheet. And same thing, if you haven't used Flubaroo before, you'll have to in Sheets go to add-ons, get add-on, and find Flubaroo. Oh, so you'll need to give it permission to run. Okay, so add-ons, Flubaroo. I've enabled it. I want to go to now grade the assignment. So the first step was to enable it. It created a sheet. Now I'm going to grade it. So what's going to come up here is each of the questions I've got along the side here. I want to decide how I want to grade them. Do I want them to be used for grading, like this one where it says student name? I've chosen just identify student. It actually did that automatically because it's smart. But all the other questions, if I want to use them for a mark, I can also change what I want to give them. I can also grade by hand, which is something you would do if you have any text questions mixed in with multiple choice questions, because Flubaroo will only automatically grade for multiple choice questions. But if you have text questions mixed in, then you say grade by hand for that question, and it allows you to do that and enter the mark. So that's set up right. Now the next step is it's going to say which one is the answer key. So that's why I named this response that I put in as key. I'm going to select that as my answer key. So now what that will do is it will look at that response as the right answers for all of the other ones. So now it's grading. It's created another tab or another page within my Google Sheet with the responses. So this new worksheet, you can see here's my original student submissions. The grades worksheet is now where I can see the marks, where it's been graded. So I can see over here how they did on each question. And I can see they really didn't do so good on this question. Google Forms are. The other ones are not so bad. Great on these ones. So you can get a little feedback that way. Some other neat add-ons with Flubro, if we go in there, we can ask it to email grades if they've entered their email address. We can ask them to email grades to all the students. We can write in our own message. We can put the answer key in there if we want them to see that. In addition, we can view a report. Okay, it just gives you some points scored. It's not actually that interesting. If we go to advanced, some great ones are the idea of enabling auto-grade. So if we click on enable auto-grade under the advanced features of Flubro, okay, it says I have to set up my grading and email settings first. So basically this is similar to the process we just went through for it to grade the first time. We tell it which questions are for marks, which are the ones that identify students, if we have any that we have to grade by hand. Very similar to what we just went through. Which one's the answer key? We've got that selected, the one that I called a key. And now it's going to email it automatically. So you can put in a message, include the answer key if you want. So auto-grade is now enabled. So once a new submission would come in, automatically the student would be graded and they'd be emailed their mark. So that's really great if you're doing formative assessment for sure. You can then go and disable it if you want to turn it off later. So it's turned on for now, we can turn that off. And some other advanced options are in here. If you want to say why is a certain mark highlighted in red, you can set at what level a student mark would be highlighted in red. So if you make that lower, and submit, so you can see this one is highlighted in red because they received below that mark overall. So some quick little things like that. So that's a quick look at using Google Forms and add-ons. I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, feel free to email me at alwhitehead@cesd73.ca and check out our other videos on the Chinook's Edge YouTube channel. Thanks.